So we have some questions, and then you can answer in Norwegian if it's better. That's fine as well. We are going to provoke you guys a tiny bit. I can give you the first question. Is this on? Yeah, it's on. Yeah. How can artists contribute to in what way can artists contribute to ensure that city development is done in the right way?
Skal jeg begynne å
Yeah.
Kan du liksom spørre den på norsk,
Yeah.
på en måte?
Hvordan kan kunstnere bidra til at by- og tettstedsutvikling skjer på en bra måte?
Det var et spennende spørsmål, da. Hvordan For det første så må vi jo på en måte ha noen ideer. Og hva har vi lyst til? Og så det en måte hvordan skal man gå frem på det. Jeg synes at og så synes jeg at det viktig å kunne være påvirkere. Hva viktig for meg? Hva ønsker jeg med hvordan byen min skal være? Eller stedet mitt skal være? Så må jeg tørre å påvirke det, eller ha meninger og ytre meg om det. Vi må ha energi og tørre. Og så det andre utfordringer.
Men da blir det litt sånn, hva kom først, høna eller egget? Det prosjektet som kommer først, eller artisten som, eller kunstneren som, ja, eller ideen?
Ja. Jeg tror det varierer, faktisk. For det forskjellige strukturer og hvordan man jobber, eller hvordan man går frem. Ja. Kan tenke litt mer på det, faktisk.
Ja, noen av dere andre?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, in what way can artists contribute to ensure that city development and development of small places are done in the right way?
In small places?
As well as cities. Yeah, just take the microphone. Okay.
I think I would love to rephrase the question actually,
Yeah,
because
go for it.
I think it's important not to say that the artists are carrying the responsibility to change the place. I think places needs to realize the value of the arts and celebrate that and to make it possible for the art to enter the space instead of artists trying to convince society that we should also have work and so on. I mean, we're not poor bastards. We are delivering content and meaning and identity. So we shouldn't be so thankful to participate. We should be celebrated as somebody who can provide something that other people cannot provide. And I think it starts with a kind of basic level of education that we're always told that art is some kind of cost, some kind of dessert we can enjoy when everything else is fulfilled. And I think it's a completely wrong perception of art. I think Menno also talked very nicely about this, that, you know, what we perceive and how we perceive things, if the ceiling is higher or lower or whatever, art is part of that. It's part of your stimulus package. It's part of your, like, if you want to have a rich life, you can't just lower the ceilings and turn off the colors and just count the money. So I think it's very important to learn that art and design and architecture, good architecture, is something people need, and we shouldn't be, you know, sitting there with a paper cup and say, please give me some money. Because we are making ourselves poorer by that way. I mean, I think that's why it was very interesting for us, me and Didike, to be part of that city development in Oslo at a very early stage, because we are not there to make it nice. We're there to be critical minds and think and put the thinking on the track in a different direction, so so you get on track earlier instead of like running down the track, and then when you find out it's a dead end, then you call an artist, can you fix this? So then it's too late, basically. And I think also the perception of art in Norway, especially, is very much related to some kind of like coziness. I mean, Norway, they think they are so free and individual and open and democratic, and we talk about Taliban and other crazy guys as fundamentalists. But I realized that Norway is a very fundamentalist country, and it's based on kos as fundamentalism, because nothing works if it's not koselig, and art should be koselig. And it's just fucked up, because we're not in the department of coziness. We're in the department of creation and thinking and rethinking and reflecting and doubting and improving the parameters of society. And we're not into creating desserts. And I think it's very important to really turn the whole conception and understanding of what art should be, because if you do that, then suddenly art gets its own place and in the cockpit of the thinking of what do we actually want from life, instead of just sitting in the back in the economy seat hoping for a free ride. So I think that's my criticism of the system of a lazy, rich society, which is Norway. And I think it's also significant to see the difference with Germany, where I live, that even the Minister of Culture, Monica Grütters, she explained, why do we need art? And she said, we need art as a spike in the dead flesh of our society. So even the Minister of Culture in Germany understands that art is able to kind of like wake you up and show you some kind of like meaning of life, instead of just sparkling your boring weekends or something with some coziness. I think that, yeah, that's my opinion.
You remind me a bit of Henrik Ibsen.
We are in a former praying house. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, praise be, Lars Ramberg. I couldn't agree more, so I'm not going to add to this. I didn't speak in this seminar, so I'm just going to shortly say that I'm currently director of Møre and Romsdal Arts Center, currently located in Molde. And I'm finishing my assignment here in November, I think. I'm just doing my program here. And before that, I was actually once placed in Trondheim, when we were also debating how we were going to develop a Kunsthall in Trondheim. So I was part of that process a very long time ago. And I've been placed all over Norway. And I would say also, I would maybe correct that it's not only Norway being cozy with liking cozy art. It's very much Scandinavian, I would say. It's a Scandinavian coziness problem. Because we are here in this fantastic seminar. Thank you, everybody. It's been wonderful, incredible presentations from all. And Carl, of course, Kristiansund Kunsthall, the whole initiative. But this is the absurdity. We are sitting here doing this seminar and discussing, and someone, I think it was you, Britt, who asked about where are the politicians and so on. And it's not to be rude or in a way boring and having a critique or anything. It's just that it's so important to know that we are in a Kunsthall that has no funding It hasn't got the regular funding. It was just started like this. And it's a contemporary art space. It means, and it's a seminar about contemporary art, Samtidskunst, and stedsutvikling, urban developing. And the contemporary art needs its own spaces. It needs its own, it's a field of its own. It's actually, the art is a science, like any other science. Like if you were going to make the most fantastic place for surgery, you would talk to a surgeon, wouldn't you? I mean, you would bring in the professionals. So that's why it's so important to have the artist in before processes start. We touched on the subject at another seminar in Ålesund last year, where I was part of the organizing it. So I think we just have to do this again and try to connect with the people who are actually having the power to say yes or no to funding, and try to maybe not sit with a paper cup, but actually have real grown-up discussion and talks and communication about this. Because it's 2023, and I think this talk and these seminars, how many have I been to up through the 30 years in Norway? Many. And it's always been the same discussion. And it's kind of, you know, I'm a bit like Britt, that I feel like, oh my God, why isn't it happening? You know, I've been through this so many times. But anyway, thank you very much for this seminar. It was absolutely wonderful. But I think we have to continue the communication somehow.
So now it's up to me to answer how this is going to happen, since I'm the only bureaucratic slash semi-politician here. I love cozy. I think that's one of the strengths of our society. That doesn't mean that we can't be professionals, and that doesn't mean that we don't view art as an essential part of constructing this society. And I think that through what we're doing in Nordmoria and through what we're trying to do with all of these grand buildings that we're working on, I think we're trying to show as a society that we're actually viewing the arts as essential as the plumbing, as the painting, as the rooftops, like as the rest of the building. But I think that if you're expecting that the society like this is going to go from not acknowledging to suddenly acknowledging full on, that's not going to happen. So I still think that the artists, you asked how can they contribute to making it a good solution, or was that, I was paraphrasing you.
Done in the right way.
Yeah, done in the right way. And I'm questioning what's the right way. And I'm thinking that for me, as head of a project, having artists coming in at an early stage saying, how can we incorporate this into the rest of the building, like using art as a means to creating these spaces that we were hearing about just now, the good spaces that actually trigger our brain in certain ways, or that trigger our emotions in certain ways, that the artists can see this in a completely different way from actually both architects and engineers and constructors, like everyone else. You have a much freer position. So I'm thinking that that's maybe the main value in it. But then I've met artists that are extremely knowledgeable on what type of flooring do we need to have, what type of ceiling, how is the acoustics. Like, they know a lot of things, or you know a lot of things about stuff that you shouldn't. Like, you're professionals in a lot of ways. So I'm thinking that it's not only the art, it's the whole atmosphere of the room and how we perceive it. But I'm still a fan of cozy. And representing the more public sphere in it, we need to be challenged too. We need someone to come into my office and say, listen, I know you're doing this, I have an idea. What about, how can we talk about this? Because our doors are open, we want this to happen. It's just that from the day-to-day work, it's not always easy to make space or to sit there and think that for yourself. You need someone to come and challenge you. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not against people having a thrill for coziness, but I was just trying to say that it's not the artist's role as a professional to provide the coziness. You can do a lot with drugs and Netflix and a blanket and sex. That's also cozy. But I think, you know, if you want to look at what can the contemporary art provide for society, the notion of coziness isn't on top of the list for us. It's like you can go to the hairdresser and you can also have a nice therapy ride and talking about life and everything, but that's not why you're going there. You go to get your hair cut. So, and you can have a nice talk as well. But I think it's important also to stress that visual art, at least, is very much a part of a emotional and intellectual experience. And that's why I think it's cool we sit here also in this bedehus, because before, in terms of city development, you built a church and a town hall and a school, and then people started to come and they built small houses around it and small businesses and everything. So you kind of like planted this main tree with that kind of like spiritual house as the church used to be. But we don't do that anymore. But you build culture houses like you do. We all know about the Bilbao effect, where the city of Bilbao was completely destroyed. It was unemployment up in the roof, and it was sad and post-industrial. And then suddenly Guggenheim built this enormous museum with the most expensive architect in the world, Frank Gehry, and it said boom, and suddenly the whole Bilbao changed. Not just the museum, but suddenly it went from culture as a cost, as something, oh, can we afford it, to becoming the new economy of Bilbao. Now actually Bilbao is booming economically because of Guggenheim. The hotels are fully booked because of the Guggenheim. The restaurants are fully booked because of the Guggenheim. So actually the art is financing the other businesses. And I think that's a very cool twist, just to realize we have to rethink the idea of art as something which is very expensive, and we have to see if we can afford it. It could be that kind of new church providing spiritual, intellectual, emotional, qualities we don't find in shopping malls or even schools. And I think there was a lot of talking about children today, which is nice, but I think that's also a problem, that children are not taught the value of art and philosophy and psychology. They are, fed with information, basically what they don't need. So I think we have to start much earlier to plant a seed, to create a larger understanding of what is the purpose of art.
To challenge, yeah, sorry, go for it.
For me, is art like a language. You have to learn the language, and I think it's necessary to speak that art language together. Also, I mean that also me, I have to learn. I learn from you. I learn from you. I learn from you. I learn from all of you all the time, and I think it's necessary to learn the art language as well. Also, all the people more and more. Yes. Also in the community, we have to talk about with all the people, like we do here. So it's it's every day it's a big work to work with these things, with art. We have to work and work and work. Yes.
I think, just a little comment, I think what Menno told about the high ceilings, I think that was fantastic. I always thought about this myself, because I always stressed I need a studio with a high ceiling, and people say, why? You don't even make art in your studio, you make it in public space. And I said, I need to think. And you just proved my point, that you actually create different things if you have high ceiling. And I think that's also the function of art. You don't need art to decorate something, the wall of your sofa, but you need it to raise the ceiling, to have a perception of life which is a little bit higher than just the basic needs.
I actually said to Menno today earlier that I was looking forward to his talk, but remember, art is a thought, not a thing. So it's actually all happening in the brain, and it's all the things that you have said here, and it's all connected also to this. You could twist it to this economical, in this form that you are talking about, Lars, but it's also could also not be about money, because it's imagination. That's what you are offering. You're offering, the art is saying, hey, you could think like this. You don't have to think like you're doing now. You could change. Art is really, really funny and anarchistic in that way. And that can, of course, be challenging if you're going to use it only as a means to earn money or make something more expensive or develop and so on.
No, I totally agree. And the reason I brought up the money issue was that just to kind of like stop thinking in a very fixed way, which we always do, that, oh, that's too expensive, we cannot prioritize it. So, but of course it doesn't have to be about the money, but I think it's interesting to see that even this idea of art very often censored. I mean, we think we have no censoring in this part of the world. We think that's in China and North Korea. But we use again and again money as an issue for not doing cultural events. And that was my point. It's such a cheap investment. You give an artist $1 million and you get value back for 5 million or 10. So but of course, you're right. It's not about the money. It's about how people think about art as a cost or as a value.
I want to make a comment for you, Lars, because yesterday you was talking about your work in the library in Oslo, Deichmanske. I've been there, and I didn't know your philosophy behind that work, you know? I came inside, I saw this, I will kind of provocere litt, decoration. It was, for me, it is an art piece, beautiful, nice, and yes. And so it's not necessary for me to know always what is behind all the things. And yeah, it was amazing to see your project there.
Thank you.
Although I didn't know anything about...
Of course, it's amazing to look at, and that's also important for me. I think the former idea of conceptual art is that it was only smart and intellectual and didn't have a aesthetical value, or you work aesthetically and it has no meaning or no concept. I totally love to kind of provoke both those cliches, because I think you should do what you do, just look at it. But if you say, was this all? Is there something more? And there's a catalog there for free, people can get it, and you can read about it and the story behind it. So there is more. But of course you can just think it's beautiful. But I'm just saying that's not why I did it.
It was also very nice to hear yesterday all about that project. That was the extra.
Okay, Next question is, so Kristiansund calls itself the city of culture, and there are many other places who do that. What are the requirements to be called the city of culture?
Let me start with that, because I was the one who sent in the national application for becoming the City of Culture in Kristiansund. And when I did, I was confronted not only by everyone around us, but by my own people at my department. Why on earth would you do that? We're not finished. We're not accomplished what we should have as a cultural city. And I said, I've seen Norway's cultural cities. There is nothing that should prevent us from being that city. And I think that we wait and wait until everything's perfect and until we've reached a certain level or whatever. But we need to actually put our faces and heads out there and say, you know what, we know that we're not perfect, but we're trying to do something about it. Getting this acknowledgement would actually lift this. It would force it up into the political atmosphere, so that also our own politicians, our own people actually living here can acknowledge the importance of culture. So it's not only to put a stamp on, okay, nailed it. It's more to actually get it up and say, you know what, this is important. As a society, we need to have a focus on this. We need to spend money on it. And I have to say that in Kristiansund, what I know about the municipality, which is actually quite a lot, is they're actually willing to put hundreds of millions on a table to do this project. And of course, it's important to have projects that are not also publicly funded for many reasons. But at least we now have the infrastructure to facilitate so much more than what we've done before. And we're talking about the kids, and the reason why I'm talking a lot about them is exactly what you're saying. We need to educate them so that when they see that in Deichmanske or wherever it is, I remember I was opening an opera here in Kristiansund one year, and I said, okay, you're now going to see this and this. Don't feel stupid. I don't understand it. I'm the head of culture. I don't understand what's going on stage, but it's funny. And it's good music, and something's happening here, and I can kind of figure out in my own head, why was he killing that person now, and why is she lying down there, and why are everyone's kissing, and why is this a chaos? But what we need to teach our children is, when you meet art, don't feel stupid. There's no reason. You should feel angry, or provoked, or happy, or just think it's nice. But it has to do with the individual. So I'm just, yeah. I think
What were the criteria, or what were the arguments you wrote when you wrote the application?
we're super. I wrote that we're actually putting funding in, we're using money on culture. This didn't have anything to do with sports, by the way. This was arts and culture. I said that we're partners in the opera, in the museum, in all of these different institutions. So there was a lot of substance to it. But of course, there's a lot of stuff that we don't do, and that was also a focus. If we get this title, we can then start focusing on this and this and this that we need to build further on. So it was just as much to get it up in the attention to it's not the crown, it's kind of like the symbol and the attention you get. So I still think Kristiansund is a cultural city.
But can it then be said to be a gentrification tool? Since that is the kind of aim, then it can be said to be a gentrification.
What do you mean by that?
By art washing something, you give it a certain value. It's like raising a poor neighborhood by letting artists rent studios there.
Yeah.
And then because it's cheap, and then artists raise the value of the area, and when the prices on the rent of the housing comes to a certain level, artists are being kicked out, poor people are being kicked out, and the developers reap the benefits of the process. And that's what we mean by gentrification. It's like, where is the competence to fill these buildings that because we have art education here? Is it like, where is if it's 12,000 square meters, where is the knowledge to build those? Like
Are you talking about the cultural house now?
This cultural house, I'm thinking,
Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
like the thing that's going on in Norway now, where
Yeah.
all the cities wants to be culture cities. It's like,
Yeah, yeah.
well, it's certainly not just because they're super interested in art and culture. It's because they see that it's a mechanism for raising the value, and that's what I'm interested in. Because I'm like, if we're building these huge institutions, we really need the people to fill it with knowledge. So I'm like,
Yeah.
where is it focused on bringing art education into campus, for example?
Yes.
Is it a higher art education, like a real art education
Yes.
into campus? Those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the interesting part. It's like that house is a Potemkin village until it's filled with something.
Okay, so the 4 parties that are going to be in it aren't competent?
No, they are probably
Yeah.
competent, but they're going from kind of small institutions to going to a big one, a large one. And don't you need people to fill those big spaces? So are you going to import them to the city? Is it? But I'm just wondering. These are questions that like are relevant, I guess. It's like, where are the creative people, the professionals?
So let's hear the reply.
No, I think it's a valid question and it's an important one. And I think that you're actually not addressing it to the right person, because I hear you. I'm very much in tune with what you're saying, but I'm just saying that this particular project is not gentrification. But I think that yeah, just by showing that we're actually putting money where the mouth is in these types of projects now in Kristiansund, it shows that, you know, even though the politicians aren't here today, they are interested in this. They just don't have this knowledge necessarily. You know, they don't have the knowledge about marine industry. They don't have knowledge about construction. They don't have the knowledge necessarily about education. They don't know these areas of expertise, but you do. So, which is why I was also so happy today to see so many artists and so much competence here, because this is rare. This is not necessarily something that we could do if the municipality, if the region, if the state was inviting. That you invited us here today means that different types of people show up. So I think that these types of arenas too need to be put in place and actually be put in. You're going to have more seminars, I hope. And I think that the rest of us who are working in these larger institutions, we need to build up under this. We need to support it, and we need to say yes, and we need to be here, because this is not something that we can do. So we need all these aspects to actually manage to get this train running. Yeah.
But you talked a little bit about it with the library section.
Yeah.
Because I think the role of a leader of a library isn't what it used to be. It's more a curator
Absolutely.
than it is anything else.
Yeah.
So the roles of the institutions have changed so much.
Yeah.
So there has to be some form of like leveling up. You know?
Yeah, and we're building a house that's going to house 70, 80, 90 people from day one, professional, cultural people, and that's just the start of that project. But you're quite right, like everything needs to be connected to everything here. So higher education, all of those things are going to start rolling. Yeah.
Am I right in remembering that Rensvik was one of the people, or if not the person who ensured that the orchestra in Kristiansund could afford being an orchestra by hiring them teaching at the Kulturskola? Is this right?
The combination, yeah.
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 So maybe that's the type of thing that you're referring to, like ensuring that you just don't hire the artist project-based, but ensure that they can stay. So it's a sustainable solution in that sense. Am I right?
Yeah, kind of. You need, like, if you have the houses, you need the infrastructure. So absolutely, to give jobs, of course, to people who come, but also it's like to raise the level.
But can I just comment one last thing, and then I'll stop hugging the microphone? But what I also mean by understating that these are going to be competent cultural professionals is that these are also competent people in ordering this type of
Initiative.
well, yeah. And I'm thinking that, you know, when we know what we're looking for, and we know we're not looking for, we want you to paint this type of picture with these colors, such and such. We want you to be an artist. You know, that we go from the purely instrumental use of art, but actually allow for it to be an experimental stage and to be like, it's the whole process of it. So I think the more competence we build within the municipality, but within the region, within everyone who's working with this on a daily basis, also the bureaucracy, not least the bureaucracy, I would say, the higher and higher this is going to reach. So I have absolute faith that we're going to be a competent, what do you call it, bestiller in English?
What?
When you book something, when you buy something. So we're going to be a
Booker?
competent customer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Booker.
I want to say something. I think it's great that you build the culture house and the opera looks amazing. But I think just to give credits to Carl, I think this kind of initiative is super important because it's a independent institution, and I think for the visual art at least, it needs a lot of space which is independent from, you know, the public taste or the public opinion of what is art and so on, and to kind of have a experimental space where you can put in crazy art for a short period and you don't have to have a lot of staff to take care of it as a museum because you don't have a collection. You can just bring it in and bring it out again. That's the definition of a Kunsthalle, which is a German term. And it's also interesting that in Germany, it's actually by law said that every single city in Germany, they have to have a Kunsthalle. Otherwise, they won't get the definition of being a city. So, there must be a Kunsthalle in Kristiansund, and Carl is the perfect leader for it. I just hope that you can get serious funding for it as an independent institution, and that you can collaborate with more state-funded and city-funded institutions. But you definitely need more than one. And I have to say, I'm very critical to, for example, the new National Museum of Norway, that they put everything under one roof, like the Architect Museum, the National Gallery, the Contemporary Art Museum, which used to be in the bank. Everything was put together, so now you have like Brudeferden i Hardanger next to a wedding dress, and you have a soundtrack of Edvard Grieg next to it, so it all goes together, and it's easy to think this is contextual, but that's wrong. This is not contextual, it's just a mess. So it's much better to have, like in Berlin, we have so many different museums in the same city. So you go from Neue Nationalgalerie to Alte Museum to Hamburger Bahnhof to Bode Museum to Gemäldegalerie, and you go to Kunstwerke. You can go on and on and on. You can walk for days from museum to museum, and every museum is different, has a different collection, has a different curator team. So it's not going to be flat, and I think that's the problem with these huge houses with everything in one kind of shopping mall, that it could be a little bit flat. So you need a diversity of art institutions, and you need a subculture. And I realized, I checked fin.no, I mean, this city is just a grab. You know, you should put it out there, and you would have like 500 artists buying a villa for less than the price of a Tesla in Kristiansund. So, I mean, this could be the new Berlin if you want it. it's so cheap, and it's such a great place, great food, and Carl could be the president. Of the new scene. So I think that was amazing to be here and to hear all the talks and to see this kind of subculture just starting to bubbling up. I really wish best of luck. Thank you.
Well, before I ask you, or before you come with the question, I actually want to challenge you a bit. Because, for example, just to put into perspective, I prefer folk music over, folk musicians over very intellectual musicians, because I find them easier to understand. So I prefer the work that Marco did over, this is an unpopular opinion, but I thought the Guggenheim Museum was ugly. And it made me angry, and then I got even more angry because I was like, this is art, so it's okay to be angry, but I just really hate it, and I can't hate it, but I can hate it. But my question is like, how do we engage people into art if we make it so isolated, and it's like, no, like, okay, yeah, cool with the public, but let's be independent and let's do our own thing, and it's not our responsibility to tell the society you should appreciate us. It's not our job to pitch the same way as actually other people do as well. So, yeah, there you go.
I know what you're trying to say. I'm not saying art should be isolated. That's why I decided very early on to work with art in public space, because I thought a lot of artists are isolating in their studios. And they say, don't bother me, just leave me alone, I want to make my art. And they want to show it in a white cube, so only, the people who love art show up. So it's actually very protected. So I decided very early on to do public art because it's where you get the most slaps in your face and most criticism, and you become a hate object, and Aftenposten starts to call you dokunstner. So that's why I don't see it that way you say. I don't think art should isolate, but I think art should be free to do whatever the artist likes, if you manage, because there is a very heavy filter anyway to do things in public space. So you can't just do anything you like anyway, but you can try. And I think the ideal situation for an artist is to at least think that you are free. Then you have economical limitations, space limitations, bureaucracy, and a lot of limitations. So you're not that free anyway, but I think it's important to have an idea of art as somehow independent from ideology, from group dynamics, that it's still a one individ behind it. And that's what I'm saying with independent. But I really think art should connect. But it's okay when you also trigger. You say you become angry, but that's also okay.
Yeah.
Why is being angry kind of like an emotion which we don't like? I like being angry, and I also like to be happy. I mean, it's like you can't have either or. So I think art should have a range of different kinds of expressions. But that's, again, back to the coziness. I think even coziness is good, but if it's only coziness, then we're back to being fundamentalist again. If you can only say there is only one God and Jesus Christ and hallelujah, and you're not even allowed to doubt it, then we are in trouble. So you can have coziness, but don't use it as a sedative just to float around and art should be everything from decoration to provocation and everything in between. So I think You need the institutions, but you also need the independent things. You need the anarchists, and you need the commercial galleries stealing your money by 50%. And you need all these kind of things, because you need a underwood of culture. Otherwise, you cannot be a culture city if you have just one museum. You have to have a diversity of all kinds of crazy things, and you need art education, you need housing, you need studios, and you need art journalists who can write about it, who can communicate it to the people and tell people why is this art interesting. So you need smart people to translate it for you and say, why is this nice?
Yeah. So the journalists can become, or people like journalists can become our linking point.
Look at sport journalists. They are the most paid journalists, because they can talk about how interesting football is, and it's a huge field. Every day you turn on the TV, it's like you have the news, 20 minutes, and then you have 10 minutes of football at the end, and then the weather. Imagine to have the last 10 minutes with culture. People would be so educated and so enlightened about why is art important. But we choose to go for football and cross-country skiing. And I talked with Lars Elling, another brilliant artist in Norway, and he said he had researched it, that Norway, until the 20s, they actually had been putting a lot of focus on the arts and the whole nation building with Wergeland and Grieg and Ibsen, all these kind of things. I mean, art was big, and then suddenly there was a political decision in the beginning of the 20s that Norway should change the nation-building method from culture to sports. And that was actually a decision to go to sports and to use sport as a new nation-building thing that connects everybody, and everybody can look at football and langrenn and hop and so on. So it's a political decision, and we can change that back if we just fight for it.
Just one question?
I just want to add, like, I think the most important question is how can we as a community or in this county or whatever lift this artistic initiative like it is to survive? Because let's ask ourselves, how many hours do we think Carl has put down to make this happen, for us to sit here? How much money does he actually earn to make us sit here? And so the question he asks is really important, because I think the access you have, I will have, it's so important that we have an awareness of that, because if not, it's here for a while and then it disappears. We need to see the network, what different, the professionality comes into the society. So how can we take care of that? Because
Can I answer that?
Yeah? Do you want the microphone?
It's by, no.
Yeah.
It's because Møre og Romsdal commune or fylke, Møre og Romsdal doesn't like most of the commune in Møre og Romsdal doesn't have a culture plan. They have no plan for culture. It's like 8 out of 26 communes have absolutely no funding. Only 8 of 26 communes have a support system for artists. We have to start there. We have to start on getting implemented culture, to get a kulturavdeling. Each commune need to have a kulturavdeling. How else are you going to do it? So it needs to be done on that level. It needs to be start to get like get funding into the kommunes, into fylke, into art, because 94% of the communes, like almost 100%, have no culture plan, have no plan, have no like, so like, that's what we need. We need Møre og Romsdal to get their fucking act together. Like, seriously. I'm
And that is what we are doing in this year, making this plan. So we have started, that's the point. But I want to say that for me is art and music and visual art, and what art is like food. I need these things to live. And if we take all away, what's happened then? It's also for the body and brain. You have to have these things. And I think sometimes I want to eat beef, like this house, and sometimes I eat different things, and all these things is necessary for me to live. Yes. So also, I mean, if this is a kulturby, I mean, if you see to the different things, it's a lot of things happening also here. But of course, yes. But what's for me, this place.
Of course, there's a lot happening. It is.
Yeah.
I'm not slagging anyone.
Yeah.
It's just like, if we expect more money to come from governments into Møre og Romsdal and into the arts, what do they need to rearrange their infrastructure?
Yeah. But I think things are happening. It's going to happen in the next. I think the Kulturrådet and Koro, they have seen what's on in the last, perhaps last 2 years. It's a different things happening in Møre og Romsdal. And why is it happening? Yeah, because we are working with these things. Me and you and other people.
You had an answer?
No, I just wanted to answer what you actually asked about. How are we going to take this onwards? And I'm thinking, as a concrete suggestion, that we should actually have, we should set, this sounds very municipality when I say it out loud. In my head it was better. So I'm sorry. But we need to sit down together more often. We need to have, I don't know, some kind of working group. It doesn't need to be politically decided. You say that we decided on sports. I'm begging to differ, but I see that it actually did work in some way in the society building. You said that in the 20s we shifted towards sports from the culture. And yeah, and if we want to shift this back, I think that we need to be some individuals, to be quite precise, that need to sit down together and talk about this on a regular basis to actually find out, okay, who can talk to who? How can we contribute to pushing this forward? It's amazing to have seminars like this, but this is an ongoing work, and we need to have more people into that pool, because usually it's the authorities, it's the bureaucracy, maybe some artists, like we're really lucky to have Britt with us heading the committee here, and all of you having initiative, but we need to put a system to it. And that's the language that the society understands. So I'm thinking that we should put down, some people need to talk to each other on a regular basis from this day onwards, to see how can we change this, or how can we speed it up, because things are happening. And I don't know where you got that number with the cultural plans from, but that's incorrect. So I will...
Give me the right number then.
For how many municipalities have a cultural plan? Or do you mean an art plan? Oh, that's a different, yeah, that's different, yeah.
Yeah, art, but
That's correct.
many of them doesn't even have a culture plan.
A lot of them do. So not 98% of the municipalities in Møre og Romsdal, that's not correct. But
I want the right numbers then.
yeah.
If you can tell didn't have to prove the right. Give me the right number.
I will. I'll send it to you afterwards, Carl.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, I was wondering, we were talking about youth and children. What about the school education? What's a creative subject in the school? I mean, it started somewhere.
It's so poor. It's so low level. They're still teaching middle age techniques. It's like you have to draw to become an artist. It's like, seriously? We live in 2023. You need to draw to become an artist? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
So, before we round up, I actually want to also share my opinion on this. When we used to do marketing strategies for businesses, we wouldn't convince the businesses. We would go and see what the people wanted, and then we would argue to the businesses. We need to see what the people want and then argue to the politicians, because they don't care unless you, the voters, decide. The second thing is, when they come with a cultural house and they go, we got the funding for it, okay, I really love this city, I love the people, but their immediate response is, oh, it's gonna go down, it's not gonna go well. Well, you need to support them then. If you want this to go well, you need to support the people who are doing this sort of stuff. So that's my reply, in this case at least.
My comment wasn't that. It was actually about how can we as a community
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Carl,
Oh, specifically Carl.
I mean, really how this place, because it is a different initiative with very different muscles, if I can say so. So it's not a question I
Yeah.
want a direct answer. I just asked out in the room.
Well, it could be with the business plan.
I don't expect an answer.
No, sorry. Yes, go for it.
I think it wasn't meant to be as a negative response to the culture house. I think it was more like a second thought about when you do such a great thing, it's important not to use it as a pillow to sleep on to not do other things, because that's what very often happens. Oh, now we did so much for the arts, so now we don't have to do anything anymore. And I think that was the kind of alarm clock. It was more about, don't think this is enough, but it's great. But just to put in this boring money issue again, we put a lot of money into sports, right? I mean, I think just smørebussen to the cross-country team in Sochi was about 35 millions, and that was without the workers, you know, just the bus. And some other numbers, let's say Haaland, I think he makes the same amount of money a year which you have as total budget on the whole culture house, just for a comparison. So, you know, the sports, they don't really need state funding because they actually are a money machine. So I think it's very important that, of course, the arts and the culture should be grateful for the money, but it's really very little money in comparison to what it brings back. Because it brings back, like today's topic, it brings back place identity. If you come from New York, it's cool because you have Metropolitan, you have Museum of Modern Art, you have the High Line, you have everything which people relate to in New York. It's just not because it's high rises, it's because it's a cool cultural city. Or why do you go to Paris? Just to ride the subway? No, it's because you want to go and see art and culture. And why do you go to Berlin or London? It's always the culture, which is the destination, why you go places. In the 80s, people went to the Mediterranean just to get a bad, severe skin burn, you know? But now people go to cultural cities to experience things. And so culture is a destination, and it's a very cheap one compared to the sports. And I think it's just, I hated when I was a student that the sports and the culture was put together in the same department, Ministry of Culture. And I think this has nothing to do with each other, but I like it more and more because I think well, then we should have the same conditions. I also want a smørebus for 35 millions with a coach and a psychologist and everything. So when I'm tired after a show, can you massage a little bit there and a little bit more here? I mean, the arts should be much more prominent, and that's why I'm also not so afraid of this elite thing. We are very afraid of calling it elite in Norway. But look at the football again. They have the elite series. Nobody says, oh, that's so elitist. It's like, I love the elite series, have another beer. You know, so nobody complains about the elite series in the sports. So why are we so afraid of being the elite? Elite means you're good. And why do we think that the elite is destroying the width? And then back to the sports. Nobody thinks that when Marit Bjørgen wins 25 gold medals, that normal people stop liking cross-country skiing. On the contrary, kids, they want to learn this because they also want a gold medal. So bredde and elite is not a contradiction in the sports, but in the culture we always put them up together as like, so what do you want, elite or do you want folkloric art? So that's a very manipulative way of discussing culture. Of course we want elite. That's why we build a fucking Munch museum. But we also want people to, you know, go to ballet lessons or learn to play the piano. But it's not either or. And that's why I like it more and more to compare myself with the sports, because they fixed all that and they make tons of money. And nobody says to Haaland, oh, I think he's so commercial, why do you make so much money? People love him, they want his autograph. If I made 1 billion a year, people would say, that's a fucking commercial artist. He's such an elitist. So take the sports rhetorics and just turn it around and use it for yourself, and you will have a great success.
I think you and I should discuss privately. but I think Carl is probably the best answer to how we can support, or like, was it a rhetorical question? Oh, we can, yes. Thank you. Did you want to say anything?
I just want to...
I want to present the numbers. I want to present the numbers of this
And that's what's nagging you. Yeah, I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
I just have to leave.
Yeah.
Because we're so I want to...
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank all of you for coming. Thank you, all of our technicians. And we want to thank you, speaking of money, Sparebank Nordmøre, Koro, Kristiansund kommune, Møre og Romsdal fylkeskommune, and Kulturrådet for supporting Kunsthallen. And some people here, Carl, want you to come to the stage. Come to the stage, yes. So, as a thank you from the people here, this is yours. Thank you for getting everyone here and giving the space to talk. So well done.